Hello everyone, welcome to our daily news analysis. We are discussing the news for 4th of July 22nd. Okay, so these are the topics that we are going to focus upon. Moving on to the front page, we are not going very deep into this. So just for understand, what all things have taken place. So Shinde wins vote. So no confidence motion that was there. He is able to prove his majority. He is with Shiv Sena. Then there is one of the leaders of the National Congress Party, Mr. Sharad Pawar. He has said that this thing is not going to last for very long and there will be midterm elections. Now, this news, I think you would be all aware what is happening on the social media. This is associated with Rahul Gandhi's some statement that was taken out of context and linked with Udaipur killings. So this channel journalist is being taken to task, and likewise the minister also had sided with this view, the doctored view. Now what I feel is that we have these incidents of fake news that is taking place, fake news, the role of social media. Now we can use this from the point of view of mains examination, GS2. So freedom of speech and fake news, then fake news and hate speech, then what measures are the government taking, or what measures they ought to take to address the issue of the growing incidence of fake news. So very, very important. But when we are writing such things, we have to, be mindful of the examples that we take. Next, we have Sharjeel says assaulted in cell, moves court for protection. We're not really interested in the events over here, but we get the issue of custodial torture, custodial death. I'm not saying that this has happened really, but the issue of custodial death, torture is very, very important. In fact, yesterday there was an opinion section which talked about technology playing an enabling role in addressing the issue of custodial violence or custodial torture. Right. So this theme is very, very important and we must work on this thing. Center and Delhi government granted 4 weeks to respond to petition on water harvesting. Fine. So in the Delhi High Court, somebody has filed a petition saying that, every time this rains take place and there is flooding, urban flooding. So what is the government doing about storing this water? These cities have water scarcity. Now the floods are taking place. We are not able to harness this water. So shouldn't we invest in water harvesting? What is the government doing? So somebody filed a petition to this regard. Now this itself, this alone is actually a topic for your GS2, that is judicial activism, judicial overreach. Actually not overreach, judicial activism, right? So this topic is very, very important. Okay, now moving on to the water harvesting thing. So with reference to water harvesting in a city, what can be done? Naturally, they can focus on rooftop installations. The water that comes or that that falls on the buildings, that may be stored in the tank. So that can be done. So for later use, it can be used. So rooftop water harvesting is being utilized. There is a scheme of the Delhi Jal Board to provide financial assistance of 50,000 rupees 50,000 for installation in respective buildings. Okay, apart from this, I know, like I am in Chandigarh, so we have this lot of gardens and all. So these open areas, so they allow for the water percolates, it falls on the parks, it percolates and recharges the aquifers. So groundwater recharge takes place. Even though it is not mentioned here, but this is also one of the things that can be done. Beyond this, what can be done? We can have some structures dedicated for storage of water, inspired by what was happening in the medieval times. So the traditional ways of water harvesting, like the baulis or having those local ponds, so such structures should be developed, right? So that is again, we can have water harvesting structures in the urban scenario, and more we can learn from the traditional ways of water harvesting. So this again, this in itself, traditional means of water harvesting in itself can be asked in your mains. And I think we all know this. Delhi, be it Jaipur, be it any city actually, any old city, they will be having some boulis. They will have some structures which were used for harvesting, which is storing and then harnessing the water. So this in itself is a theme that is important for your mains. Okay. Now I refer to the PIB over here, and from the PIB, I was checking as to what all the government is doing for this water conservation in the urban scenario. So on the eve of the National Water Day, International World Water Day, so the Jal Shakti Ministry, they started a nationwide campaign known as Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain. Naturally, rainwater harvesting is catching the rain. So catch the rain where it falls, when it falls. Then we get some of the schemes that the government has taken up. So we have first we can see Jal Shakti Kendras to be set up, intensive afforestation, so that would be done, and then Atal Bhujal Yojana, so Bhujal, Bhu ground, so groundwater. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. This has an independent component for integrated watershed management system. So this has multiple schemes within it. Then Narega, watershed development management, right? All these schemes that you can see. And then it tells us about the issue of the concrete jungles. You know, all these cities with the roads and everything, the mud that was there that is being taken away. Now we have all these buildings, cement structures. So they don't allow percolation of the water back into the ground, and the groundwater recharge does not take place. So that is also a problem, and we should actually find an alternative to that also. So that issue of concrete jungle can also be taken up from the point of view of means. So this link I'll share in the comment section. Okay. Next we have Dhyana Mandir to be built at Alluri birthplace. So yesterday we talked about this freedom fighter, freedom hero, Alluri Sitarama Raju. In fact, I had also covered it in the history section of our Mission Mains 2022. So yesterday's video I shared a PIB which told us about the achievements of Alluri Sitarama Raju. Okay, so that you can take it from there. Okay, so on his birthplace, the Dhyan Mandir would be set up. And he also remarked, the Prime Minister Modi remarked about the 100 years of the Rampa rebellion, which was being led by Alluri Sitarama Raju in the Godavari range of the Madras Presidency. Okay, so this we have, and further there will be a 30-foot bronze statue of Alluri Sitarama. Right, so again, it only signifies that this is very, very important and we must know more about it. And from the mains perspective, all I'm saying is that we should have a short note about his contributions. That's all I'm saying, because this has been there in the news. Okay, now coming on to the opinion section, and today actually all the topics are important, but I'm not taking up all of them. I'm just taking this one. So one is about this Maharashtra issue. Again, we have discussed this already before this coming. So this defection proceedings had taken place, right? I mean, the people had defected. Defection proceedings have not taken place. People defected. The Shiv Sena camp, so Thackeray camp and the Shinde camp. So there was a split that has taken place, kind of a split that has taken place, and naturally this would have attracted the defection proceedings. Now, if a person has defected or not, that is actually taken up by the speaker. Now, before the proceedings of defection could start, the new camp, the election to the speaker had taken place. So, election to the speaker has taken place before the defection proceedings could start. So the speaker got changed, and now again the defection proceedings are taking place now against those people who are actually part of the Thackeray camp. Fine. So this is why the elections to the speaker was important, and in this regard, the governor played a very pivotal role. So governor said that the election to the speaker should take place on a priority basis, and therefore the proceedings started. There is no standard norm as to how the elections to the office of speaker takes place. Like pan India, every state has different systems. So here it takes place according to the governor's action. Okay, so we get the two issues over here. One is the role of the speaker, and other is the role of the governor. And the article says governor's partisan role. Okay, deal or no deal, US and Iran should start direct talks to find ground on the nuclear deal. Now it's the same thing about the sanctions that have been imposed on Iran, right? So Iran and USA, and then Iran and India relations, how it is affected. It keeps coming in the news, that's why I'm not taking this up. Okay, India needs to scale up direct nutrition intervention. So what all schemes are there? You can easily find it, Poshan Abhiyan and all, and we get some facts. Unless you're writing an answer, this is not much of help, but yeah, you can read it. Because we tend to forget the facts unless we have utilized it somewhere. Okay, this article is telling us about the draft e-waste management rules. So we get it. The e-waste rules are being updated. So these are in the draft stage, and there are some concerns associated with it. Okay, now coming to this article, this is written by an ex-ambassador, and this article is telling us about, it's basically saying, read this line, instead bilateral engagements may be much more productive at this point. So he is creating a binary between the bilateralism. Bilateralism means like India and Pakistan negotiating, India and China negotiating. So bilateralism between two countries, by two, instead of multilateralism. So he's saying multilateralism is not having much of a, right, not much of an importance, not much of it we have seen. So he has given the example of BRICS. He's talked about the contradictions in BRICS in the recent times, given India-China's complexity, its relations, then the Ukraine war and Russia. So Russia-India-China relation is hampered because of this. So from that perspective, the contradictions in the BRICS. And he talks about the G7. Now I may add to this, the ineffectiveness of the United Nations, right? So ineffectiveness of the UN, the issue with the WTO, especially after the Doha round. So WTO also, the standstill is taking place. So not much progress is seen. So we see that again, lack of development in with the SARC also, SARC summit also. So there are some problems. So multilateral forum. So where multiple countries are there. So we don't see much progress. So this article is saying that the multilateralism, it seems there is not much point in pursuing it. Rather, we should actually focus on the bilateral. That is, we must talk with two countries and talk amongst us between the two neighbors, whichever countries which we have problem with, and sort it out. So this is one line of thought. Other is obviously what are the issues with the BRICS, what are the issues with the G7, what is the G7 and its implications for India, which we covered in the previous DNA. Okay, so that is there. Now let's just conclude this thing. Thing is that both are important. We have to balance, we have to have a balanced approach. For example, let's take it up. India has been focusing on the BIMSTEC. India has been focusing on SARC. Fine, because of Pakistan, we are not able to make much progress in that regard. But the collective region needs a collective solution. They need to work together on certain problems. So it is very important to have multilateral platforms also, because multilateral platforms allows for the respective countries to sit and talk together. So engagement takes place. Yes, there may not be consensus. Yes, the statements that they give out, because they want to bring about a consensus, they may, come upon a least common denominator or LCM kind of things, which is agreeable to everyone. So something like that they will do. So that effectiveness may not be there, but then it is agreeable to everyone. So whenever they have a discussion, whenever they have a deliberation, and when they come to consensus that is agreeable to everyone. So when they say, if you want connectivity in the South Asian region, or South Asia and East Asia BIMSTEC, or in the Bay of Bengal region, we have to talk collectively. It cannot be bilateral. Yes, bilateral, we may say that we must work together on this forum. So multilateralism is important. At the same time, bilateralism is also important. If we have a problem with Myanmar, we have to talk to them directly only, or with Pakistan or whichever country. So both are equally important, and so this, this binary, this yeah, the UPSC can ask then, since this is a topic that is being discussed, other people, a lot of people are thinking about it, but both are important. We cannot simply go by the view that the author has given over here. That's all I'm saying. Okay, then BRICS, I think we can see the contradictions in BRICS. First of all, this BRICS was supposed to be an economic platform, which was actually proposed by Jim O'Neill, who was an economist with the Goldman Sachs, and he said that by 2050 there will be new global powers. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, most of them being the emerging countries. So the center of economic power will change from USA led world to these countries. They will dominate in 2050. But the thing is that, and the idea of the BRICS, these countries coming together, was that this was an alternative to the G7 basically. The alternative that, the kind of exclusivity that they had. So this was an alternative to that system. So be it the dominance in the IMF, WTO, climate change summits. So BRICS provides us a fresh breath of air over here. Okay, so that was the idea, and the idea is that they will speak in the common voice. But the thing is that these countries, first of all, Brazil is in a different continent altogether, South Africa is in a different continent. Then India is an emerging country, China is at a different stage of development, Russia is an already developed country. Then the Russia-Ukraine war, then the difficulties for India, then Russia and the growing nexus between Russia and China, especially after the war. And the issue with the Russia being stuck between the brother and friend syndrome. So Russia needs the support of China and India, and naturally, if India and China war is taking place or any tension is there, Russia may not be in a position to take sides over here. And this article says that it has done very little when we have a conflict with the Chinese side. But we expect that if we have good relations with Russia, then they will help us in influencing China. Right, so a lot of contradictions are there in this thing. Then even with reference to the G7, this article says that G7 is more of an economic, but this time when the meeting had taken place, it was having political tone, naturally given the context of the Ukraine war. So that was there, and India was supposed to be expected that they would be able to influence India and speak or condemn the Russian side. But India was predominantly focused on these issues, the core issues, that is environment, energy, climate, food security, health, etc. Right, now I feel this is important, this is more important. Unique. Next article, need for space sustainability, very, very important theme from the point of view of GS3. So space, sustainable use of space, right? So we get these terms, and I think when you're writing your answers, these terms must be reflected. Orbital crowding, lot of satellites being there on the orbit, the chances of collision also taking place. In fact, SpaceX, SpaceX, Tesla companies, Elon Musk company, so their Starlink program, a constellation of satellites, so that will provide internet. So there was a concern that it was going to strike. It was very, very close. It was on collision path with the Chinese space station. So orbital crowding that is taking place. And a lot of these satellites are getting redundant. They get wasted, but they remain in the orbit. So as a result of this, there is space debris, waste that is roaming around in the space. Then so we have complex satellites, we have orbital crowding, everybody is able to launch the satellites. waste satellite getting waste, they have a shelf life, everything has a shelf life, so now they are not usable, so but they are roaming in the orbit. Then we are going to have the role of private player, more and more monetization of the space resources. So we need to focus on space sustainability. And therefore, some sort of regulation, some sort of mechanism should be there to regulate the space sector. In fact, when I talk about this private thing, you saw with reference to internet, I gave you example. What about mining activity taking place on Mars? Right, so a lot of things are there, space tourism. So a lot of more of this space thing is going to come up. So therefore, we need some regulations. In fact, this article doesn't tell us, but there is this known as Artemis Accords that was there in the news earlier. We made a video on this, and now we have the UK's Astro Carta model, which is talking about how we can sustainably use the space. What all things should we do? Okay. Now in this article, you find something, the introduction over here, then it tells us about some concerns, like it says that Earth's orbital environment has more than tripled in the past decade. You can use this fact in substantiating. So when you say this, it reflects how important this thing is, what is the urgency over here. Then it tells us about some risks, so orbital crowding, space debris, solar and magnetic storms, terrestrial carbon footprint. So these are some issues over here, and beyond this, we are looking at, obviously we need to take some corrective measures. So one is we need to develop technology that allows for reuse and recycling of satellites. In fact, Indian ISRO is working on the reusable launch vehicles. SpaceX is again a reusable launch vehicle. It flies and then it can land also, it can come back. Then active debris removal. So whatever debris is there, it should be captured and then removed, taken out or expunged further into the space. In orbit servicing, there is a space station or there is a satellite, so if the satellite needs refueling, then supply the fuel rather than making it waste altogether, or some repair work is to be done, some value addition is to be done, so that to be done within the orbit of the space. Now, what does this UK's Astro Carta model say? And this can be applied universally. It's not specific to this, but it can be done universally. So it says, first of all, we need to review the regulatory framework. Some regulation should be there as to how the space resources are being used. Then there is a need to work with organizations such as the G7, UN, etc., and emphasize international engagement on space and sustainability. Naturally, this is from the UK point of view. So UK must engage with other countries, and this can apply for India also. So India must engage international engagement, because everybody has to work on this issue. It's a global problem. In fact, space is a global common. Okay, then we need to have some sort of standards. So safety and quality related metrics, and quantify the sustainability of activities. Then active debris removal. For this, additional funding is being provided. Then there is always a risk of collision that is there. So for this purpose, there should be a space surveillance and tracking program. In India's context, to observe the satellites, we have the project Netra. Right, so this is there to ensure the collision does not take place, and the space and debris that is there, so that is being monitored. Right, so this is what the UK is doing, and what India is doing, we have it over here and here. So in the Indian context, we have the InSpace, that is Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, that was formally inaugurated. So this was done. Then the increased role of the private sector. So private sector can also play a role in promoting space sustainability. We have some startups also like Agnikul and Skyroot. Then Netra initiative. And then our international engagement with USA, actually 2+2 dialogue is taking place. Okay. Now beyond this, this is not related to this, what the government is doing for this space sustainable use. There was this anti-satellite weapon that India had launched. Right, so this we have, and then we have something known as SpadeX, which is about in-orbiting servicing. So ISRO's initiative for in-orbiting services, which is developing a docking experiment. Docking means where satellites could dock from where work could be done, and then they are discharged within the space. So this is it actually, and what next? So this is actually the next part over here. What next should be done? Now, quickly moving on to the international section, we just have it here. Sweden and Finland hold NATO talks. Right, discussions are going on. Putin orders Russia to fight on question 6. Myanmar hosts first regional meeting since coup. So this is important, and this is naturally from the pre-perspective. What is the name of this initiative? What are the countries that are part of it? Naturally, from that perspective, and also from the mains perspective, I'll come to that. Okay, so Myanmar had a coup. So there is a military dictatorship, or there is a junta government that is there in Myanmar. So you can see this is India and this is the Myanmar region. Okay. So because of this thing, international engagement was not taking place. Now with the China's help, with actually not China's help, China's initiative, Myanmar is hosting the Langkang Mekong Cooperation Group. So this is a Chinese-led initiative in Myanmar that includes the countries of the Mekong Delta, which is a potential source of regional tensions due to a number of idle electricity projects. So see, this is so one thing we get it, okay fine, India is not part of Mekong Langkang project. So which all countries are there? So this is the countries that are part of the Mekong Delta, which is highlighted over here. Right, typically it was ask you about India only, which of countries not part. So Lekong is actually, this Langkang region is actually the northern part of Mekong, which Chinese side call this as the Langkang River. And here number of hydel electricity projects have been built by the Chinese side. Now naturally, because these projects are on the upstream of the river, the places that are downstream, they have a concern. The countries that are downstream, they have a concern. So therefore, there is a probability of regional tensions. And there are also, this in a very hush way, very quiet way, they criticize the Chinese for these projects that are there, the ecological damage that is taking place and all those. I say in the hush voice because the Chinese side, because China has a lot of power, lot of influence in this region, so nobody wants to really upset them. Now, how is it important from the mains perspective? So we see the intensification of the ties between the Chinese and the Myanmar side. So traditionally, India has decided that we are not going to talk to the military dictatorship because it is not the legitimate form of government of Myanmar. So they have taken this traditional stand. In the recent times, actually, there is a shift. While the China has been leveraging this, China has been intensifying the relationship when the Myanmar side has been facing exclusion. Be it US, any other country, they are not engaging with them. So China's relationship has been intensified. So this, from one aspect, it could be with reference to they can play a role in with reference to the terrorism that is going on, the insurgency. Most of our border of the northeast is actually with the Myanmar. It's only in the Arunachal region, which is China. Okay, so one side is this. The other thing is that we are concerned with China's string of pearls doctrine, that is to encircle India. And we have the policy known as the Iron Curtain policy. That if China wants to encircle us with the number of ports, with the naval presence, then we are going to block Chinese entry into the Indian Ocean region, specifically when there is a conflict between the two countries. So this comes especially at the Strait of Malacca region, which is actually southwards. So there is the strait. So strait means a narrow opening of the between two land masses. So this will be blocked. So that is the idea. The idea is to choke China's economy. The thing is that if Myanmar relationship intensifies, they are going to get more of this funding. They are going to, side with the connectivity initiatives that are opening into the Indian Ocean region. So that is one thing. So one is the militancy thing, other is this thing. And further, our cooperation, our good relations with our eastern neighbor may also get compromised because of this. This is always a concern with China. So be it any of our partners, be it Bangladesh, be it Nepal, be it Sri Lanka, it is actually China which is one of the sore points. Now coming on to the economy section. So first we have the exports grow 16.8%. Very good. It sounds good over here. But then imports have increased 51%. So widening the trade deficit. So we are importing much more than around 3% actually, 3 times more what we are actually exporting. So this is not a good sign, to be honest. So this is not a good sign, and our current account deficit is increasing as a result of this. This also means our currency will weaken, means inflation will also increase. Okay. Then there is this thing, windfall tax to add to kitty by rupees 1.3 lakh crore. Here again there is a reference of government to review oil export tax on forex rate oil prices. So we'll combine this two over here. So see, oil is getting more expensive. I'm discussing windfall also. Oil is getting more expensive, right? Because we are importing oil first of all, and the cost of this oil is expensive. Then it is being refined and then sold back. We actually export we import oil to one of the highest in the import basket. Oil is the highest percentage, and our export of oil is also significant. We export the refined oil. Okay, petroleum. So because of the increase in the forex rate, because the rupee is depreciating and dollar is appreciating, so when we are selling oil, we are getting more profit as a result of this. So the companies that are selling, they are earning more money. Plus the oil rate is also increasing. So because of this, these companies, whosoever is selling it, they are getting lot of profit. So they are earning more profit. So therefore, to check this, to take out this excess profit that is taking place, a tax has been introduced known as windfall tax. Upar wala, like lot of money that you get all of a sudden, windfall. So taking that away, windfall tax. So that is the concept of windfall tax. Then we have government said to hold firm on deficit target. So that is their fiscal deficit is increasing. It is ought to increase with all this happening. Okay. Oil slips as recession fears balance tight supply. Okay. So thing is that oil is required for consumption, of course. It is required for companies, it is for production related activities, for transportation, for freight. Now if there is recession means lack of demand. Recession also means lack of demand, lack of money for people to spend. So in that case, the demand for oil may also come down, and that is the reason, with the anticipation, with the US consumer confidence that is there, it is very low. Chinese side, they are concerned about recession. So because of this, the oil prices have come down. Now there is this analyst from JP Morgan. It says that if Russia cuts output, then the oil can touch $380. Now with reference to this center said to take steps to tackle rupee volatility. As oil prices rise, current account deficit will go up. So to check up the issue of rupee volatility, center to take steps. Okay, so let's see what the government is taking. We know what steps they will take, but let's wait for 2-3 days. What are steps the government is taking? Sterilization, it is called. Okay, so this concludes our daily news analysis. So thank you for streaming in to our channel IASPrimers. Bye bye, take care, and all the best.